Welcome to the stream. I'm Adam Coble. This is an RPG First Look. This is an RPG First Look that I know a lot of you have been clamoring for. Some asking politely, some multiply tweeting me being like, Adam, Lancer, Adam, Lancer, Adam. I know. I'm excited too. I'm really excited. So Lancer is an RPG that I have known about for quite some time. A very, very long time, in fact. I remember having a conversation with the Lancer design team back really, I think before there was such a thing as Lancer, talking to them about what it would look like to kickstart a role-playing game, something about giant robots. Most people, I think, know about Lancer as a result of this beautiful business right here. So the artist for the Lancer role-playing game, aka Abaddon, is also the artist for one of my favorite comic books of all time, just in terms of setting, in terms of art, in terms of story. Kill 6 Billion Demons is so good. It is so incredibly good. And if you haven't read that comic book, do it. Just go do it. It's great. But this is not that. This is Lancer. So we're going to be talking about Lancer today. Lancer is a giant robot role-playing game. It's a role-playing game about being the pilots of giant robots. And that is a big challenge. Now, I guess before we really dig in, let me give you the lay of the land here. So first of all, this is a first look. So despite the fact that the Lancer RPG PDF has been out for a little while, I have not yet looked at it. I know what the cover looks like, and that is it. I have not. It is a first look in the most literal of senses. So I'm going to be doing a very surface level examination of the game. We're going to be looking mostly at a few salient points, checking out some of the art, trying to figure out how the game actually works, whether or not it's a kind of game that I would be interested in playing, and maybe you can figure it out as you go. For yourself, but I'm not going to dig in. I'm not going to be like reviewing. This is not a review. I haven't read this game in advance. So there may be some stuff that I'm going to be like, that doesn't make any sense. And then you're like, but Adam, it does make sense. You just have to read more. That's okay. This is not the time for reading more. Imagine a first look as if I were walking around in a game store. Say I've got all afternoon and I'm wandering around a game store and I've picked up a copy of Lancer and I'm flipping through it. And you're going to be there with me, and we're going to get sort of first impressions and I kind of have a handle on what Lancer is about, hopefully. Now, the other thing is, Lancer is a very large game. It's like 400 plus pages. So we will not get to cover all of it. I will be skipping probably the entire last section. I'm not going to dig into the setting of the game outside of what the art presents, because there's a lot of setting material. And if there's repeated stuff, I'm not going to go through like every piece of gear or every single giant robot or whatever, but we'll try to get an understanding of what the game looks like. My priorities today are to figure out, what is this game about? How is this game about that? And what are the players rewarded for doing in the game? Those three things should give me an understanding of whether or not Lancer is a game that I would like to play. Right? Because that's why I read role-playing games. Any RPG is of some value in terms of understanding RPGs in general. I think even ridiculous, terrible, not very well-designed games still have a place within the greater sphere. God knows I own several of them. I've bought Shadowrun more than once. So it's not about judging whether a game is good or bad. It's just about getting a handle on it. And now, because also I've wanted to be sort of more clear about this with the streams. I always mention this in the title of the stream. I usually mention it at the beginning of the stream. I put it in the description of the YouTube video. Some of these first looks are sponsored. Sometimes companies come to me or designers come to me and say, hey, would you like to do a first look at my game? And I will say, maybe. What is it about? And then they tell me, and then I say, this is how much it costs. And then they pay me that to do it. Others, if I don't mention that it's a sponsored stream, others are not. So Lancer, I'm doing this one for me and you. This isn't, nobody's paying us to take a first look at this one. This is one where there was enough audience excitement. And honestly, I've been wanting to read the game. And this is a nice way for me to absorb it. So this is a non-sponsored first time ever look at the Lancer tabletop role-playing game. So let's do that, shall we? Let's just look at it. I think we've done enough preamble. This is Lancer. Welcome to it. So Lancer, this is what we get in our first 2 pages. This is the front cover over on that side. This is the inside cover. The boldness of the design immediately, I think, is really great. Like, that is not what a normal role-playing game cover looks like. Normally, role-playing game covers, let me envision one for you. A normal standard role-playing game cover is a piece of hero art in the middle. It's the title at the top, and then it's the author's names at the bottom. Even Dungeon World is like this, right? This looks a lot more like a movie poster than I think it looks like a role-playing game. This implies a lot about the world. It implies a lot about the game. Cover art is so important because it's meant to give you, and a lot of people say like, oh, don't judge a book by its cover, and that's true and fair, but like, it draws you in. It pulls you into the game. It tells you not only what this game's world is like, but it also tells you some things about who you might be in this game. So obviously what we can learn from the cover of Lancer is giant robots, but not just giant robots, right? It has this sort of Baroque, like, this isn't Mech Warrior. This isn't rundown, big, boxy robots necessarily, but it's also not Ava or Gundam, right? We see scale on the cover. We see some smaller robots. We see some humans. We see some enormous robots. We see spaceships, right? We can tell immediately that this is not only a sci-fi game, but it's a sci-fi game with, look, swords and staffs and maybe psychic powers or magic. There is some degree of science fantasy going on here. There's a very particular aesthetic, and I'm curious about what we're going to learn about how that gets mechanized. Because again, if you remember, one of the things that I consider to be a cardinal sin in role-playing games, cardinal role-playing game sin, the art cannot depict characters doing things that the mechanisms do not also allow. So, for example, if it shows on the front cover somebody doing wizard type shit and you can't do that in the game has failed. The game has stumbled, right? Don't show fighters wielding 2 axes when you are not allowed to wield 2 axes in the game. It's a baseline thing a lot of people forget. So as a result, the flip side of that is anything portrayed in the art is possible in the game. Now, I don't know if we can play all of these people. I don't know if we can pilot all of these robots. I don't even know if that's what the game is about. But I will say this. I love how we have a diverse set of humans on the front page, right? We have several people of color. We have a black person on in a prominent place in the cover art. We have a good gender balance. And I think that for me, what I love about this cover, what draws me in is the use of color, the use of saturation. There is this very like sort of busy style that I really like about it. And you know what I think is really interesting about this cover particularly, the thing I want to know most about, I don't really care about who these characters are or what their deal is giant robot wise. The things I want to know most about are what's going on with that girl's collar, the like orange collar with the weird drippy bits on it. And then what's up with that insect robot in the middle? What's up with that green guy, right? I'm drawn to this because I think that the sort of cluttered, over busy cover indicates to me, along with the size of the game, there is a lot going on in this game. So with that in mind, I guess we better dig in, right? We gotta get into this thing. So let's start our look through. So this is Lancer. We're looking at the core book. I don't know if there is a more updated version of this core book, but I grabbed it right after it went live on Kickstarter. I'm a Kickstarter backer of this game. I grabbed the Kickstarter backer version. There may well be a more updated version, but this is the one I have. It is by Miguel Lopez and Tom Parkinson Morgan. It is a role-playing game. Let us find out what this game is about. So I'm going to skip over the table of contents, except to say that the game is 424 pages long, which is quite a lot. It's a very long book. And we'll take a look at what what takes up that page count, right? So I guess we can look at that. So the introduction to the game, theoretically, what we need to know to get us started is 14 pages. Creating our characters and our robots are 20 pages. Missions, uptime, and downtime get us to 53. And then mech combat gets us to 85. So really, the first 100 pages of the game, the first section of the table of contents, gives us a lot to go on, right? This feels like mostly the game's rules and character creation stuff. And then we get into the compendium, which is much larger, right? Starts on 86, goes to 250. This appears to be types of robot, as well as gear for characters, right? Gear rules and what have you. So this is the compendium. The GM toolkit runs us from 254 through to 333. It's a pretty decently sized GM section. And then the Golden Age kind of, this is the setting material. That's another 100 pages at the end. So about a quarter of the book. I gotta say, thank you to Lancer for putting the setting material at the end of the book where it belongs. Like, seriously, thank you for because I think most modern games are going to do it in this way, right? Instead of this way, they would be like introduction to the game, setting material, character creation, rules, and then GMing, I guess, at the end. And usually the GM and the GM rules and the monster manual all kind of get lumped together at the end. I definitely prefer this. It's, what is this game about? How do you make a character? What are the rules of the game, right? And that comes after the basic rules. What are the full rules of the game? And then additional rules, and then finally setting material. Because the setting material, it's the least interesting part of any role-playing game to me. Like, if somebody comes to me and says, I got this really cool role-playing game, I'll say, cool, what's the mechanism? What's the thing, right? What's the one piece of that game that jumps forward to say to you, like, this is a good game? Because if somebody says to me, I got this really cool game, blah-de-blah-de-blah, here's the setting I'm going to describe for 20 minutes, I am going to take that person and I'm going to grab them by the collar and by the belt, and I'm going to throw them into the sun because I'm not interested in setting. I don't care. Setting is a reflection of the rules of the world over time, right? So if the mechanisms of the game imply a certain kind of universe, then the setting is a byproduct of a universe where those rules are in place, right? So this is a much better way of presenting this. And also, obviously, like, we're going to get bits and pieces of implied setting, because in this game, in the compendium, you can see, and this is obviously just a guess from here, but I'm guessing there's a reason that the Smith Shimano Corpro chapter exists and why they use robots named Morning Cloak and Duskwing and Death's Head, right? This is going to come with some setting information, right? The setting is implied by some of the material. This is exactly the same as life paths in Burning Wheel, right? Exactly. Are there rules for starship combat? Then starships fight in this game setting, and we maybe need to know what they're fighting about. But for now, all we need to know is, what does it look like when they fight? This is why in Dungeons and Dragons, I like alignment, because alignment says something about the world, and the setting should justify what a world would be like where alignment is a real thing. So same, right? We understand what the game's structures and components are, then we contextualize them with setting. And that is, for me, the purpose of setting. Context for mechanisms in a fictional world. It sets the stage, right after we know the rules. So we're going to dig in. Apologies if some of the spreads don't work out because of the PDF reader. Obviously, getting started is meant to be one page with this cool cowboy robot and his cool cowboy friend, but that's going to happen. That's just how it goes. So I will read part of the introduction just to kind of get us warmed up, and then we're going to try to answer, what is the game about? What do the mechanisms say to reinforce that? And then how do we get rewarded in this game? So, all right, it is 5016 U, and the galaxy is home to trillions. At the core of humanity's territory, there is a golden age, but outside this newly won utopia, the revolutionary project continues. You are a Lancer, an exceptional mech pilot, among already exceptional peers, and you live at a time where the future hangs as a spinning coin at the apex of its toss. The fall is coming, and how the coin lands is yet to be determined. Setting, filling the void. There is faster than light travel. It looks like warp drive, right? Connecting all worlds is blink space, a vast and strange parallel plane, parallel to the one that we live in, pierced by blink gates that allow us to travel in speed or safety. Filling the lonely void is the OmniNet, which is our sci-fi internet. The form of that wealth is mana. So this is not a post-scarcity society necessarily. Data is the new wealth. It's interesting. Okay. And then the vast mass of humanity is ministered by a sprawling government union, the galactic hegemony. Luna and Mars, Mercury and Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, and Uranus, Phobos and Deimos, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, Titan, and Enceladus. These are the worlds strung in their orbit around Sol, the diadem atop which Cradle rests, the seat of Union's power. Okay. All right. So humanity still, this isn't like Stars Without Number where we've gone far away from Earth. You can fix the spreads by going into View, Page, Display, Show Cover in 2-page view. Let's see. View. Let's see if you're right. View. Let's see. Page Display. I don't know where that. See, this is Page Display. Okay. I don't see a View Cover option. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, that's all right. We're going back to Earth. So the game is doing, it's a bit Stars Without Number before the Scream, right? Which is, I think, kind of a cool, it's a cool thing. But there's this, I mean, this is a common thing in sci-fi. It's the core worlds are civilized and populated, and then the further out we go, the more sort of lawless things become. Union is a communal post-capital utopia at the center of the universe. That's fine. And then the sheer size is done right. So it's so big, Union can't rule everything. And so there's rebellions, insurrections, pirate wars, and whatever. Okay. All right. So we've got characters. We are Lancers, exceptional mech pilots. We don't know anything about ourselves yet, except that is true. So if you bring this game to your table and you say it's a game about playing mech pilots, people will know whether or not they want to play based on, do I want to be a mech pilot? If the answer is no, this is our first statement about what this game is about, right? Doesn't matter. So you have to play that, right? We don't know what those characters are doing or why. Like, it's the same as saying you are a knight or you are a wizard. It's a bit, right? It's a little bit of like a hint, but it doesn't tell us what we do yet. So we'll have to find out, right? Okay. All right. So, let's see. You are one person alive in this time of tumult and peace, a time of promise. You are one whose life is lived in the great river. One person in the right place at the right time can divert the course of history. You are a mech pilot. Yours is the story of the spinning coin at the apex of its toss. At this pivotal moment in history, what will you and your comrades do when fate, foresight, and luck puts you in the right place at the right time? Okay, all right. So it's not just that. It's you are a mech pilot and you are in a universe where big things can happen with a small push by one person. The idea is that even though the universe is huge, things can be changed by individuals. Your character, here we go. Your character in the world of Lancer is a mechanized cavalry pilot of particular note. Whatever the mission, whatever the terrain, whatever the enemy, your character is the one who's called in to break the siege or hold the line. When the drop klaxons sound, it's up to them to save the day. You hail from a world or culture of your choice. Oh, Earth is called Cradle. I see. Okay. Bunch of stuff about humanity. This is all setting material. I want to know more about like what we do. Let's see. Lancers are a cut above other pilots. They have better recruitment, training, and maintenance than most people. Like, do we belong to a military? Like a specific military? Like, we know we're important. We know we're slightly better. Yeah, we're PCs, which is cool. This is a good way to explore that. But I still don't know what we do, right? I know that I'm better than everybody else. I know that I have a giant robot. But I guess we'll have to figure out. I'm looking for what ties the group together, either in the game or in the structures of the GMing of the game, right? I'm looking for that piece that says, here's how to tie the group together. I know what I do, but we'll keep looking for it, right? We're only a few pages in. All right, so this section of the game tells us how to build our characters, and then we do mech combat. We talked a little bit about this already. All right, here we go. So the game uses two sorts of dice. This is important to understand. This is our first taste of the mechanics. Two sorts of dice, D20s and D6s. You'll roll them to determine the outcome of uncertain circumstances. When the rules call for you to make a roll, it'll tell you how many you need to roll. 1d20 means you roll a single d20. 2d6 is 2d6s. Okay. Sometimes the rules will call for a d3. That's fine. It's just half a d6. Lancer is best played with 3 to 6 players, but with as few as 2 or as many as you feel comfortable with. You need at least one d20, a bunch of d6s, and then a character sheet and some stuff. We're not going to talk too much today about CompCon. CompCon is the app, the web app, and whatever for building and managing characters that's proprietary to Lancer. It's like Lancer's, it looks really cool as you'd expect, but we're not going to dig into it today, just because I don't have time to go outside the game, and the game itself is already pretty big, but check it out if you're interested. The game makes use of a grid-based tactical combat system, so it's important to have square or hex grid. You don't need miniatures, but sometimes they can help. Most of the players are PCs, right? Player characters. One player is the game master. And then, yeah, CompCon, there it is. Okay. All right. The golden rules for Lancer. Specific rules override general statements and rules. So, like, when you shoot an enemy in cover, you would get a penalty, but seeking weapons ignore that. Okay. And then 2, always round up to the nearest whole number. Okay, well, that's cool. So it's just math rules, basically. Hang on a second here. Let me just see, because people are still whining in chat about. Oh yeah. There's already links to CompCon in chat. Yeah, you can go ahead and post those. But people are still complaining in chat about the layout being wrong. But look, I don't think there's an easy. If you know where I can click to fix this thing, so you can feel less upset about it, please let me know. I've already been misled once, so try to relax. It's okay. It's okay, Wendy of Mars. Yeah. So the one thing, and we'll talk about this. Okay, let's see. Page display, the one with one page above the 2. Oh, that way. Oh, I see. And then it. Okay, right there you go. I fixed it for you. Young Hermelin is the one that gets the prize for that. Everybody else, too bad. It is cool. We get to look at Cowboy Robot and Lancer McCree. Anyway, you're welcome. Just teasing anyway. Okay, so I will say this about the layout. For a game with such beautiful art and like graphic design, I hate this font. I hate it. It's hard to read. I do not like it. That is a personal choice, but I find like looking at this page is not. It's killing me. But you know what? That's okay. That's fine. We'll move on. So let's learn the rules of the game. There are two modes. There are two modes in this game. There is narrative play and mech combat. Much like other games, you have stuff where you're just kind of like navigating the narrative, and then there's roll initiative. We're in combat. D&D does this. They don't call it out as such, but there are a lot of games that do this thing in varying degrees. I think most games have stated or unstated phases. So narrative play, players act naturally and spontaneously. Time passes quickly. Scenes are shorter. Individual roles might count for more or less. That's pretty normal. And then mech combat, you jump in and do the thing. So I guess the idea here is much like a lot of like Stars Without Number, like Dungeons and Dragons. When we are engaging in narrative play, we're making skill checks and we're role-playing our characters. And then we're switching into a granular mode to resolve combat. Now, it calls it mech combat specifically. So I have to assume then we resolve personal combat during narrative play with like single rolls, but maybe not. We'll have to take a look. So let's see. Skill checks, attacks, and saves. There are 3 types of dice rolls: skill checks, attacks, and save. Okay, sure, makes sense. In narrative play, you only make skill checks. In mech combat, you make all 3. Interesting. So we don't make attack rolls. We don't make attack rolls in narrative conflict or in narrative play. We just make skill rolls. Okay. So a skill check is a d20. You add any relevant bonus. On a 10 plus, you succeed. 9 or less means you failed to accomplish your goal and may suffer consequences as a result. The GM can't change the target number. They have access to several tools, such as declaring a skill challenge or deciding your action is difficult or risky. Okay, so that means there's no granular, as far as we can see, there's no granular success or fail on skill checks. You either do it or you don't, right? 10 or better or fail. Okay, we'll look at what the GM's like tools they have for difficult or risky checks, but all right, so binary skill check system. In mech combat, you roll a d20, add bonuses. The target number depends on the defensive capability of your target. For an attack to be successful, needs to equal or exceed their defenses. Some attacks are results in crit if you get a 20 plus, which allow more damage or extra effects. Okay, all right. Different types of attack, they all use the basic rules. And then a saving throw is a saving throw. You roll it to prevent something bad from happening to you. It's a d20. Target number varies. Okay, so it sounds like outside of combat, you're making skill checks with a set difficulty. Inside of combat, the difficulty number wanders depending on what's happening. Okay, all right. In some cases, you make a contested check. You both make a skill check and compare whoever has the highest one. If the result is a tie, the attacker wins. Okay, this is an important rule. Okay, yeah, fairly standard stuff. You might make contested checks in both modes. Okay, 2 game modes, 3 types of rolls, and then variations thereof. You can always choose to fail. And then bonuses. Okay, all right, so in Lancer, there are 3 kinds of bonuses: accuracy, difficulty, and stat bonuses. So stat bonuses come from talent and experiences, your skills with mechs, and your grit, which is presented here in all caps in a slightly different font, which makes me think it's a different mechanism. And then accuracy and difficulty are temporary modifiers to your roll, and because of this shape, I assume they're d6s. Does it say anywhere that mech combat is explicitly combat while piloting a mech? If it is anything else, this is a terrible, terrible name for it. Like, we've entered mech combat mode. Okay, cool. Are there any mechs in this scene? No. Why is it called that? I really, really hope that that would be very weird. Okay, so accuracy and difficulty. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Accuracy and difficulty add or subtract d6s and they cancel each other out. That's fun. That's a neat little, okay. That's a neat little way of doing that. So no roll can ever receive more than -6 or +6. Oh. Okay. So you don't add the dice together. It's the Blades in the Dark pool. So you get your d20. So when you would play this, I guess if you're playing in physical space, you would want to have a d20 that's the color of your character or robot, right? So like if your robot's all silver and green, you could get a green d20 to represent yourself. That's your d20. And then the whole table could have a pool, maybe the pool of dice you bought for Fiasco, of black d6s and white d6s, or like red and blue or whatever. And then you would grab d6s from that pool and then, yeah, roll. So it's a d20 plus x d6. And the idea is that you keep... they cancel each other out. So you would say, I've got 3 advantages and 4 disadvantages, which means I have 1 black d6. I roll that and I subtract it. But if you have like 4 d6s, it just means your chances of getting -6 on your roll Interesting. Okay, so I don't know what the math looks like on that, but I think it's quite interesting. So we'll take a look and see how that works. And then grit is half your character's license level. License level is your character's level, right? It's you and your mech level up together. So you get grit equal to half rounded up. It improves your attack bonus, hit points, and saving targets. Right. Okay. So maybe then your grit isn't. I expected you would spend grit, but it seems like your grit is your proficiency bonus, effectively. Half your level, rounded up. So at level 3, it becomes +2, and it's added to attack bonuses, hit points, and save targets for both your save targets. I assume that it improves attack bonuses, so it would make it easier to succeed at. Okay, all right. So it's just it's the general scaling up of a character over time. Okay, all right. Ongoing games are divided into missions and downtime. So our structure of the game now is there is missions with downtime in between them, and then within a mission, it'll be divided into narrative play and mech combat. And then I imagine mech combat is broken down into rounds. And then all of that is managed by scenes. A scene is a period of continuous dialogue or action, activity with a discrete starting and stopping point. Helpful to think about it in cinematic terms. As long as the camera is on their players, a scene is happening. Okay, cool. All right. So the reason, and I love when games do this. This makes me really happy. I love when games are just clear about why that happens, right? Like this is the authors of the game saying, hey, so if this were Burning Wheel, this would be the little goblin, the imp with the professor hat. It's important to pay attention to the beginning and ends of scene. There's many special character abilities and mech abilities end or reset at the end of a scene. I'm a big fan of scene-based play, like go figure. I like when stuff is like you can use this once per episode, once per scene, or whatever, right? I kind of like that. I think it's better for me than tracking in-game time, right? Yeah, way harder to say this ability lasts 2 hours versus this ability lasts a scene. I think that's way more effective. Then we got some cool art. This to me, yeah, these characters read like Inuit. Maybe a little bit. I do really like that there's a baby in the back. Like this kind of mech says so much about some part of the setting, right? That it's like, I believe we're supposed to infer that this is a family. They're a family of hunters, and that they either live in or very close to their mech. Maybe they're nomads, and they use the mech to kill this giant monster. But I love the little baby. Yeah. Kind of got like an Inuit vibe, though the tattoos read a little bit more like Maori. I guess we'll have to see. Yeah, I don't see a baby. Look at the baby. Look, he's got a little like soother in his mouth. That's a baby. If that's not a baby, it looks like a fucking baby to me, is all I'm saying. I'm not sure that's, again, looks like a baby to me because it's smaller than its parents. And maybe that's a nose ring. You know, I don't care. It's both. It's an angry little man. No, but look, the nose is there. And then that's a baby. I'm saying it's a baby. I don't care what anybody else says. Cool. All right. So let's talk about building pilots and mechs. So this is how we make our characters, right? So there's a character repairing a mech. Makes sense, right? Leading us into that next chapter. Okay, so look, see, look, more violent. This is a setting of violent babies. Look, I'm vindicated, baby. So I'm saying, I'm just saying. Anybody who said that wasn't a baby, you're wrong. I have proof now. Okay. In Lancer, you don't track currency. Your access to mech, gears, upgrades, talents, and other options are restricted by licenses. I like that, right? So what you can have, and this is, I have to say, this is a brilliant way to tie character advancement to physical objects in the game and to further reinforce that it is a post-capital society. So you don't buy guns for your mech, you are given weapons for your mech based on your license level. So this is how you prevent first level Stars Without Number characters from getting a super badass spaceship. The question I wonder about, the thing I need to know is, who is giving us this stuff? Who do we work for? Can we work for different people? Is that allowed? What if we're like, I guess we're not solo mercenaries. Is it that we're just allowed to get it from the store? Anyway, we'll figure it out, right? It's the early part of the game, and it makes us ask questions that the mechanisms should theoretically later tell us the answer to. Yeah, what do outlaws do? Can we do that? Where's this stuff coming from? We'll find out. So yeah, license level applies to both us and our mech. So as we get more, our license improves, we also unlock exclusive gear and mechs. I think that's really great. I think it's cool that we are able to tie those things together. The game has a structure. You begin at level 0, you go to level 12, so there are 13 levels. LL12 is the maximum, and I'm not sure if we are supposed to... I don't know if we're supposed to stop at LL12 or there's some other form of game that happens then. We can look at that. When we make a character, here's what we need to know. Background, 4 triggers, 1+2 skill or 2+1 skills, 3 first rank talents, a license for all GMS gear, and 1 mech frame, the GMS SP1 Everest. So everybody starts with the same frame, I guess. We'll find out what that is in 100 pages. And then when we level up, when you complete a mission, succeed or fail, your LL increases by 1. Interesting. So we're going to have to look for another reward/advancement model, right? So like, what does the game reward us for? We start with the baby mech at LL0, and we all advance together on essentially an inherent milestone, right? So if we remember, the game is broken down into missions and downtime. So we do mission, part of downtime, I guess, would be leveling up, mission, right? Level up, mission, go back and forth, do downtime. I wonder then if there is like an additional... if there's an additional reward structure, because I hate milestone rewards. If this isn't the reward structure, because you can separate reward mechanisms from advancement. You can have multiple grades of advancement. Dungeons and Dragons does this, right? There is rewards intrinsic to the character, which are leveling up, experience points, whatever. You earn them in a bunch of ways. And then there's money, which is another form of reward that you can use to buy equipment, or magic items fall under that. So I'm curious to see what that other side is. Because right now the reward structure tells us nothing, right? We have nothing that we can attach to behavior wise to earn additional rewards, right? But we'll see that when we go. So when you complete a mission, your LL increases, you get an additional an existing trigger, it's +2, or you get a new one. You get +1 to a mech skill, +1 talent rank, +1 license rank, and naturally your grit increases. Higher LL parties or higher LL pilots are inherently grittier than lower level ones. Which to me, I'm curious if grit is an in-universe thing, because that doesn't feel like grit to me. Grit feels like the word feels like a personal reserve of like stick-to-itiveness or go-get-emness, right? I'm not sure that I just advance in grit as I continue to exist, but we'll see. Maybe there are other things that gets spent on or that it can improve on. Yeah. And then when you increase your LL, I like this. I love games that allow you to reallocate, right? So reallocate all the points from a talent to another talent. I'm curious if the game gives us any advice on how to narratively say, like, yeah, I'm no longer any good at this thing I used to be good at. And now I'm good at this other thing, right? But I guess we could figure that out. We'll see. That's another question. And this is usually how it goes, right? Like the early parts of a role-playing game posit questions, and then the mechanisms of the game in greater detail answer those questions. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe it's nanomachines. Maybe it's like Gola tanks. Who knows? I do like, I like this art as you could be any of these people. I think that's really cool. I think that basically all of the art in the character creation section should be there to qualify what the words say or to inspire character types. This tells us you could be one of these kinds of people. Yeah. I like all of them. I think they're all really cool. This guy looks like a villain from an 80s sci-fi. Anyway, let's continue. All right. So the pilot. Now keep an eye out. It looks like these red boxes give us setting information, right? So this is a little block of setting. This is a little bit more block of setting. And I kind of like that it's spaced out throughout. Also, remember, random tables and choices in character creation are both setting in a more significant way than a page called, like, here's the thing. If I write a chapter in a role-playing game, I write a chapter and I call it the setting. Everything in there is useful and valuable and interesting, and it's part of the game, but it's not as much a part of the setting. Even if I claim that it is, it's not as much a part of the setting as something like this. This is more the setting than the entire setting chapter is, right? Because these are concrete things we could find in the game. If I roll a d20 and I end up with outlaw, that means there are outlaws in the game, and that is now a concrete physical reality of our game. The setting chapter isn't real in the same way that rolling a background for your character is. So these things, I assume, are just little bumps to help us clarify what we're looking at on the page or to help inspire. I think that these little bursts of setting, they're useful. I definitely consider these pages the inverse of Ultraviolet Grasslands, because if you remember Ultraviolet Grasslands, this was all setting and the game was in the boxes, and that's the wrong way to go about it. This is much better. Little droplets, little tiny hors d'oeuvres that will inspire us as we're making these choices, right? Yeah, good way to prevent cognitive overload. I don't need 100 pages up front. This is a much better way to handle that. And then also keep in mind that further detail, that's also setting, right? Okay, so we roll for our background. Outside of combat, you can invoke your background to give yourself an accuracy or difficulty to your skill check if your background was relevant. Why would you ever invoke your background as a difficulty modifier? I don't know why you would do that. I know that it says the GM can, but I'm not sure. It says outside of combat, you can invoke your pilot's background. Now for the +1d6, yes, absolutely. -1 difficulty. Now I would love if there was, this is how you tie something in the reward structure, right? You can either invoke your background for accuracy, or if you invoke your background. Now it doesn't say on any skill check, it says on your skill check. Now, this is the thing, JJJ Danny, then don't is not an appropriate response because it is a rule that you can invoke it for 1 difficulty. I don't know why I would ever do that, but yeah, it would be cool if this is the devil's bargain, right? This is the make the roll easier or harder and then modify the fictional results. So yeah, if you could say get a karma point or get a better result, right? Increase your potency by making the roll harder. Those kinds of things make sense. Like the idea that you have a character who is a priest, and one of your priestly oaths is never to murder a person. Think about the tonal difference at the table, right? So you're like, I draw my gun and I walk up to the prisoner, and the prisoner's tied up, and I point my gun at him and my hand is trembling, and I want to shoot him in the face, and I'm gonna roll a skill check to try to kill him with my gun, and I'm gonna invoke -1 difficulty so that if I can pull this off, then I get some additional benefit because murdering a person in cold blood is against my background. But there's no reason to do that. Consider the tonal difference between that and then the GM saying, oh, you're going to have to make this at -1 difficulty. Which do you think is more like active engagement in the character, right? You could theoretically have both, right? You choose to invoke the difficulty, or the GM chooses and you get something. Yeah, I prefer systems where players are invited to impede their own success in exchange for a reward. Though that's my preference. It seems that in this case, it's just a penalty, right? The GM just invokes it, invokes your pilot's background on a skill check if the background is relevant, right? Yeah, there's no incentive to do it yourself. So in this case, it cuts that divide. Players are likely to be like, my background, I want it, give me the bonus points. And the GM will likely say, no, minus penalty for this. Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. So anyway, that's just my thoughts from the design. Yeah, and if there's any disagreement, the GM just is the one that breaks the thing. We'll look at the GM, and yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that this is one of the, well, see, this is the thing is it's not a GM tool because either it applies or it doesn't, right? Like what I think here is that you offer up your background, and what's weird here is like, it's not a table event, right? It's not about the group doing this together, right? It's about you invoking your background or the GM doing it. So it's not like, let me rewrite this in a group sense. So it's like, outside of combat, if appropriate, any player can invoke your pilot's background to grant you 1 accuracy or 1 difficulty on a skill check. To do this, it costs whatever, right? Like it's meant to be a fiction first thing where it's like, because your background has the thing, the rest of the group arbitrates if there's disagreement. But what I mean is it's not up to the group to like put forward your background affecting your result, right? All this is a bonus or penalty, advantage or disadvantage, and there's no reason, like in Dungeons and Dragons, there's no reason to ever invoke disadvantage on yourself. That's just how it goes. I'm curious to see if NPCs have this as well, because you'd think the inverse tool would be there where the player could say, wait a second, aren't these goons outlaws? Shouldn't they get a penalty to dealing with? I think it might just be the wording, but it does just feel like a flat, like your background penalizes you sometimes whenever the GM feels like reminding you that it makes sense. Some of these I could see having an easier time getting the benefit, but yeah, the thing is, CJ Cauliflower, from a game perspective, a purely mechanical perspective, there is no reason to fail, right? So if you are playing a game and there is a success or fail indicator, we gotta move on. But the idea here is that in this game, there are contested checks, there are success and failure. It is a binary, you succeed or you fail. There is mechanically, because it is a game, no reason to ever penalize yourself. Ever. You should never do that because there's no benefit. Mechanically, there's no benefit to failing, right? There just isn't. Narratively, there might be a benefit, and yes, you could theoretically use this to narrative benefit, but you shouldn't, because that's the game, right? You can always just choose to fail, right? Making something more difficult for yourself should come with some additional benefit, and I get that there is another level because it's a role-playing game. There is the fictional level, there's the narrative, but I think the way these should be placed is simply that if it were explained fictionally, if it said sometimes the fictional qualities of your background will give you +1 accuracy or +1 difficulty on a skill check, the group should agree when this is a thing, and anyone can invite that. That's how I would play it. Yeah. I think there's just basically the issue I'm running into here is, as a player, no reason to ever invite that invocation, ever. There's just no reason for me to ever say, oh, I should probably get a -1 because I want to succeed. Because if I didn't want to succeed, I would just choose to fail. Right? So doesn't make sense. I wish there was some kind of reason to invoke difficulty for some other benefit. That would be cool if there were points. Then it would be a lot more like invoking an aspect, right? Or compelling an aspect. Yeah. Explicit mechanics should have explicit like benefit there. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so that's what your background does. It's a bonus, it's a penalty, whatever. I probably would hack the game to rewrite how this works. I would do something different with it, but that's just me. Let's take a look. So when you pick your background, it gives you some example triggers. We're not going to go through every single background, but let's see what are triggers. There's our answer. And this is what you want, right? This is how you want a role-playing game to work. You want to show an example after having explained something, or immediately contextualize the thing after you show it. So notice how these in the middle, these examples are choose a background, right? Roll a background or choose one. You find your background. And then when you look to your background, you're going to say, read a situation, stay cool, take control, lead or inspire. What are those? What does a trigger do? And there it is, right? So that's good. Nice flow, good conveyance. Again, excellent characters. So as a central character in the story, your pilot will have moments when their background, training, and personality shine through. These moments are your pilot's triggers. Short phrases that describe key decisions and actions like apply fists to faces or get somewhere fast. They are always accompanied by a bonus of +2, +4, or +6. Now, I don't know. There's a lot, I'm sure there is a lot of discussion. I'm sure that the authors, or I'd like to think that the authors thought a lot about what to name these, because the word trigger is perfect. The way that the dictionary application of trigger in this case works, it's right. You know, fictional circumstance triggers the bonus, but also it's a psychologically significant word. It also means other things in real life. So I don't know that it's the word I would have chosen, but it makes sense in this context. So it's a loaded term. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I like this, right? You choose based on your background, almost always used in narrative play, almost never, and they never apply to attack rolls, saves, or any roll other than a skill check. Triggers are fairly open-ended. The GM is responsible for arbitrating outlandish claims. I like this. I like this. This is the, what is it called? This is the Unknown Armies skill thing, right? This is the, I have 99% skill in kicking out cop car windows and breaking handcuffs. So you write down your triggers, you get 4 +2s, and they inspire the players to come up with something that describes things their characters do. Now, the thing is that looking at it a little more closely, I don't know why these are triggers, because they're not circumstances. They're abilities, right? Like for me, a trigger would be I'm under fire. I get a +2 as long as I'm being shot at. Or zero gravity would be a trigger, right? I get a +2 while I'm in zero gravity. These are actions, yeah, or approaches. For me, a trigger is like in we never addressed this like directly, but in Dungeon World, the trigger is the fictional thing that makes the move happen, right? So like drawing my sword doesn't trigger a move, but taking a swing at somebody with it, if they're fighting back, that does trigger a move. Yeah. So I'm not really sure about the terminology on this, but I get the mechanism. So it's when you try to do X, apply Y bonus. So that's easy, right? So if you were playing, if you're playing a priest, you could say, know when someone is lying, right? Detect lies. Inflict guilt could be a trigger in this case. Yeah. I think this would be quite fun, right? Where I like the idea of a combination of constrained and freeform character creation. I'm a big fan of this stuff. I liked it in Unknown Armies. I liked it in Dogs in the Vineyard. I like being allowed to make up traits or descriptions of my character. It's like 1-point character traits in Burning Wheel. Yeah. Cool. All right. So a bunch of triggers. You get 4 of them. You can pick from here. You'll mostly play out your pilot in narrative play outside their mech. There will be times to know how your pilot functions in mech combat. They may need to bail out. They might need to track their hit points if they get injured during downtime. Well, you can get injured during downtime. Interesting. So pilots operate on a different scale, and this is another thing I'm curious about. Also, look at this flashy robot. This is another thing that's always interesting in games like this. You have to decide how to handle, I'm holding a laser pistol. Giant robot says, I am also holding a laser pistol, not the same damage. Giant laser pistol, a lot more damage. Human laser pistol, way less so. So we'll figure out how it does scale. It's like, it's like trying to take down an ATST. You got to understand. And it's been handled in many ways. Usually it's a modifier or a multiplier. Sometimes it's order of magnitude. And sometimes it's mega damage. Blech. So, all right. So we've got, let's see, size, HP, evasion, E-defense. How hard it is to hit you with electronic systems. E-defense, speed, and then you have 6 plus your grit and hit points, your size half, you have an evasion and an E-defense of 10 and a speed of 4, but your stuff changes. This is an interesting little bit here. Take a look at that. Your traits might change if you're wearing armor, especially your hit points. So that's interesting. Yeah. And then to make this pilot part of your character at LL0, choose background, choose triggers, write down your pilot stuff, choose your gear. All right. Before embarking on a mission, you choose gear from a list in the compendium. You can have armor, up to 2 weapons, and 3 other pieces of gear. I want to say this. I really like this art right here. Like, the big robot is cool and impressive, but I actually like this better as a piece because it looks to me like Mobius and the dude that drew Tintin had a baby. Like it's Mobius meets Tintin, and I think that's really cool. This is cool, but it's just much more like slick giant robot art. Like I've seen this giant robot before. I've never seen this guy before. This is really cool. Right. Okay. So the mech. Now, this is a problem that, again, most mech games run into. Where is the line? Are you playing the mech and the pilot is the emotional core of the mech? Are you playing the pilot and the mech is an extension of the pilot's abilities? Where does that line get drawn? And what art do you draw from, right? Are you coming to this from BattleTech? Are you coming to this from MechWarrior? Are you coming to it from Gundam? Are you coming to it from Macross? Gargantia? Like, there are so many giant robot fictions. We have to understand where the line gets drawn for any given game, right? So that's something we need to understand here. Yeah, Warhammer 40K, Voltron, Power Rangers, right? Titanfall, how big are the mechs? How important are they? Etc. So, mechs are the primary armored agents around which many states, agencies, and militaries base their ground force. They are between 3 and 15 meters tall. They're almost always bi. I'm just going to leave the sentence there. The majority have 1 or 2 sets of arms. Some pilots prefer their weapon systems to be built directly into the chassis, or in some cases, the integration might be a necessity. Okay. Some of them are piloted by a single robot. Larger ones require additional crew. That's fine. Mechs are agile, quick, and responsive machines for their size. They can traverse most solid and vacuum environments, and their mobility is often augmented or depend on maneuvering jets. They're heavy and reliant on cold fusion generators for power. They are common enough that they don't shock the average person. Mechanized cavalry are different. Military machines that have a lancer behind the controls, a pilot on the same level as the knights or flying aces of old. Okay. I still don't know what we do in this game, but I'm starting to learn how we might accomplish whatever it is we decide to do.